private NuGet. So today we're going to talk about running a Nuget server internally inside your organization, and then also how to build NuGet packages and put them out. So let's go and get started. So here's the always, everyone has this about me. I work for Beacon Health System. If anyone doesn't know what that is where Memorial Hospital and Elkhart General came together a couple years back, and they created Beacon Health System. So I've worked there about 6 years now. I write in .NET, JavaScript, some Python, although I will admit it's been a while since I've written any Python. Mainly .NET and JavaScript lately. This is my third talk for local variables. Thank you. Hopefully they've been getting better. Hopefully this is the best one yet. Hopefully I'm not backsliding. I'll let you guys decide that at the end. And a new bit of information. My wife and I will be seeing Flight of the Conchords in Chicago on Saturday. So I'd like some people know who Flight of the Conchords are. If you do not, I definitely recommend everything. They had an HBO series. They have some albums. They're hilarious. I envy anyone that hasn't seen them before because you get to experience them for the first time. All right, so now that we have the introductory stuff out of the way, let's actually get to the talk. So, Beacon, we have a private NuGet server that we use. If you guys don't know what NuGet is that how you pronounce that? I've actually never heard it. Is it?
That's how I pronounce it.
That's how I pronounce it.
Okay, good. Yeah. It's Microsoft's package manager for .NET. Hopefully I don't have to influence anyone or convince anyone to use a package manager. They're great. You know, all your major languages have package managers. You know, Node has NPM. I think PHP, what is it, Composer, or Python has pip. You know, they all have these package managers. I don't know if anyone's worked in .NET and had to worry about like making sure something's like in the GAC, or making sure that you have to have something installed. This just makes all of that so much easier. If you haven't used .NET, you don't know the pain that some of that brings. It was painful. So, talking about Beacon, when we do our .NET, our scope is pretty small. We don't have big monolithic apps, things that touch a lot of places. We have a lot of small apps. Mainly that's because we're a healthcare organization, and usually once an app hits a certain size, you start running into regulatory issues, HIPAA, and as a department, that's tough to take on and manage. So at a certain scope size, it pretty much has to be purchased from a vendor because they can manage that. But we do write a lot of .NET, but it's pretty small in scope. So what that means is we usually had a lot of little sites. And previously, we used to use templates. Has anyone ever used Visual Studio templates before? You pretty much you zip them up and you install them in a template directory, if I'm not mistaken, and then show up when you go new site, and then it would be an option. So we got away from that, and we built a bunch of NuGet packages that had a lot of functionality that we were using multiple times. Instead of having create a new site, go to NuGet, install this package, this package, this package, pull this over. We just pop them right into our own packages. All right. So how do you get a NuGet server? Well, there's one on NuGet. And if we look at this one, this is actually by Microsoft. So this is, this isn't a third-party package. So this is a first-party package to run NuGet, and pretty much you just go to NuGet and you say install NuGet.server, and then you run your project. That's it. I have one over here, so we can take a look. I have some code that's already ready, and then other ones that we're going to take a look. We'll go ahead and take a look at Microsoft's NuGet. So all I did here was go into NuGet and install NuGet.server. By the end, we'll install some packages here if you've never seen NuGet and the package name you work. So, and then you just publish this out somewhere, and then you're pretty much set. It pretty much has everything you need. If this launches.
Pay for it.
So there you go. So you just publish this out. You can throw your packages out. We run a virtual directory with packages, and we just throw them in there, and then they come up here. And then in Visual Studio, you go in, you say, I have a new Nuget server, and then you use that URL that they gave you up here, right here, the repository URL. You can just throw that in, and then Visual Studio will use this to look for packages as well. All right, well, that's my talk. I think I went a little short. All right, so. Okay, so that's a server. It's really easy. Just like that, you install a NuGet package, you got a server. You're ready to go. All right, so let's talk about actual creating packages. So we're going to create this library called Arbitrary Library. It's completely arbitrary, but it's going to be demonstrative of what you need to do to create a class library for your new Nuget server. So when you're using Nuget packages, when you create it from projects, we're going to use the package nuget.command line. Now this again is from Microsoft, and what it does is it pops in a nuget.exe into your packages. So I'm a big proponent of when you have a project of keeping it all internal. You know, you can expect someone to have NuGet on their machine and for it to run, but using NuGet command line, you make sure that when someone pulls this package down, that they have nuget.exe, and of course the version that you're expecting them to have to run. Okay. Now to build it, we use the documentation from the NuGet docs. I recommend everyone to, if you're going to be building your own, to read over this, see all the options that are available. I'm not going to go through all the options. I'm just showing you kind of what we use. And it'll definitely get you off the ground, but there's a lot more stuff to building NuGet packages that I'm going to explicitly show you today. Okay. So if you have a full project, you need to build a new spec file, which is how Nuget knows how to build your project and what to put in it. So if you have a project, you just go wherever your CS proj is and you run NuGet spec. And it will look at that project file and then build you a new spec file. We'll do that here shortly. And then to build it, we just put on the post build hook. And then as you can see there, if you have NuGet command line, you can just pop it in there. You say nuget.exe. Pack is the command to actually pack the NuGet package. And then you just give it the project file. And then we'll look at what the symbols does here in a second. So let's actually create a class library and create a new spec file. Okay, so up here, I have this arbitrary library. It's completely arbitrary. We have an arbitrary class. Is that big enough for everyone? I'll bump it up a little. How about that?
There you go.
Completely arbitrary, as you can see. Arbitrary method, it just takes a string and it just returns it. So this is our class library that we're going to build. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and add a new project. I'm going to come up here, and then we are going to just do a class library. That's fine. All right. So, this is how you start a new class library in Visual Studio. And then we're going to jump down here. You can run in the package management, package manager console. We can cd into the class library. And then I have NuGet on my machine, so running NuGet will do it. And there you go. That's how easy it is to create a new spec file. And if we pop over here, we should see that it has been created. All right, so here's your default new spec file. So this was created from the project. So as you can see, there's a bunch of tokens in here that when you pack it with the project file, they'll be inserted. So the ID is going to be your class name of what you created. Well, not your class name, but your project name. Your version author, a lot of these, when you see the other new spec file, I just explicitly set a lot of
So in this case,
yes.
ID is going to be class library 1, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can set some of these. I've always had trouble with the version. It should come from your assembly info, but I've always found it's kind of hit or miss. So usually I explicitly set it to a certain version, which again, that's not a huge deal, in that if you're explicitly bumping a number, that should be a step that you take. It shouldn't just kind of happen out of nowhere. Okay, so this is your default one, and now we'll look at one that I've created here. So as you can see, I left the ID as a token, but I kind of just filled in everything else. This is pretty much your bare minimum package, or new spec file that you can create that'll create a package. So we'll come up here.
Does the Nuget documentation talk about like what other tags you can, or elements you can put in there, and like what it expects as values?
Yeah, it does. Okay. So we'll come in here, and you can see on the post build event, I've hooked it up. That's exactly what it says. So you know, this is saying use the Nuget.exe that we have installed through our package manager pack, and then use the CS proj as the parameter, and then build the symbols, which that's going to give you, your PDB and some source. So let's go ahead and build this. And because it runs on build, all we got to do is build the package. Give it a second here. It should say Nuget package created. So there you go. So you can see, using arbitrary library.newspec for metadata, found packages config. It tried to see if there's any dependencies in there, which it'll use as well. So I mean, if you have everything set up in your project, you can just create a new spec file like that, and then just get you a nice Nuget package. So let's take a look. So here's the root directory. We built it in arbitrary library bin, and I think we did release. Yeah, that's right now, 649. All right, so we just built these. I have a little tool that makes it easy to look at. I cover it in one of the slides. So if we crack this open, you can see that it has all the information. We come over here with the live. It knows what what .NET version we're targeting, so it creates the one in there. And you can see there's a DLL. So that one line, along with NuGet.command line, when you have a library like this, just put on your post build, and then you have a NuGet package every time you build. So here's the symbols. This is really nice. Again, if you're keeping it internal as well, you get a PDB, and you also get source. So you can put a breakpoint, and you can step into the code that you've put into this to troubleshoot, to track down what's going wrong. All right. Again, pretty easy. We haven't done anything too difficult. Yeah.
The project directory arbitrary library.csproj, does it not recognize the project path symbol?
No, you could put your project library in there.
Because I think the whole macro gives you your full path to your csproj file.
Yeah. Yeah, any of your macros that match into there, you can just pop them in there. Okay, so that's the tool I was talking about. It's Nuget Package Explorer. Just like that I was showing you, if you have a Nuget package, you can just open it with that, and it'll expand, and it'll let you see everything inside of it, without having to grab it and install it, or they're pretty much just zip files, so you can unzip them. But it's a nice GUI to be able to see. When you're developing and you're messing around, you want to see the package. If you have this installed, you can just go. It also allows you to edit the new spec files as well and save them, if you want to use the GUI tool for that. Okay, so we just built a package that was based on a project. Now we're going to build a package that's based on MVC. So it's going to include all the packages that we need for a site and all the files, everything we need to build a working MVC site, just in one little package. So instead of using the CS proj, we're not taking the DLL that the MVC pops out and using that and packaging that up. We actually just want a bunch of files around it. So it's pretty much going to be a list of files and a list of dependencies. You guys have probably installed packages like this where it's just You know, there's no actual DLL inside of it. It's just a bunch of files that get installed to your project. So that's what we're going to build here. I don't know if you ever use cs.pp, which these are preprocessor files. And what that allows you to do is pop a token, like root namespace. Because, for example, if you have like a controller, and then you package that up, you can't use the root namespace that's in the file. You want the root namespace of the project you're going to. So by doing this, you can actually take CS files, append the PP, and you can put tokens in it. And when Nuget installs that file, it'll actually use that PP and then change it into a CS and replace all the tokens for you. So it'll pre-process all that code for you. So we'll do that. I have a PowerShell script that goes through and does that. And now the global ASX, or ASAX, I always call it the ASX. I always forget about that other A. So, you know, if you're using like MVC, usually on like application start, you throw like your route config, your bundle config, your stuff in there. But what problem can you guys see if you have a global ASX and you pop it in a package?
Override it?
Yes. So, if you have a global ASX, you have two issues. It'll say, hey, you already have one. Do you want to override it? And if you say yes, you lose everything you had, but you get what's in the package. Or, you know, the other way, you don't get what's in the package. So, how do we get around that? There's dynamic registration. I don't know if anyone have used these before, but Web Activator X. So you can write a class, and you can then go on the hook of pre-application start. So I'll show you this. I'll register the routes in this by using this hook. So you actually don't even have to write anything into the global ASX, because it doesn't exist. This will do exactly what you need. There's also Microsoft Web.infrastructure, which you can register an HTTP module. Because the Web Activator X only has a couple hooks. It only has a pre-application start, and I think it has a post-application start. But an HTTP module, you get all of the stuff that you could have in the global ASAX. So, you know, you have your application start, you know, you have request start, request end, authentication. All those events are in there, and you can register your own listeners. You know, events or error, you can have little error handlers that bubbles all the way to the top. At the end, you can put a default catch on all of that. So you can use these two, and you can use Web Activator X in the beginning to register that HTTP module on the fly when it launches. You also can use web config transformations. I don't know if you guys have ever used, if you have a site, you know, you can have release and debug, and then you can transform your web config. You can also do it on the install of a NuGet package. So if you need some things in the web config, you can put a web.config.xdt, and it's the same thing. You just use your transformations, pop them in there, and it'll modify your web config. The new package is going into. So I kind of touch on the stuff we're going to do, so let's actually build an MVC package. Any questions so far?
The cs.pp thing, that is that part of Visual Studio, or is that a third-party thing?
I mean, it's part of NuGet.
Okay.
So when you install it, NuGet does replace it.
Okay, that's
and
cool.
it is in the docs. So.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't want to like hand out source code like that, you know, you can build DLLs and you know.
Yeah.
You
It was
can
just
have
cool
modules.
though.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that replace the init and the install PowerShell scripts that you can do with it too? Is this like a newer version of that, or?
Well, it's just specifically for CS.
Okay.
So you know, if you need to do something else with just replacing tokens in a CS file, then you still need your init. You know, you still need to do that. But this is just specifically for that. So here is, so we have our arbitrary library, we have our class library. So here is pretty much your bare bones MVC that you can build. If we look at this, we can see some of the things I was talking about. I don't know if you've ever seen an app start. This has kind of been in the .NET community that if you put something that runs on app start with Web Activator X, you put it in this folder and you make a class. So right here's the Web Activator X. You say on pre-application start, use this type and look for the method startup routes. Now, I could pop all this into one, but it calls this, and we call register. So if you've ever done MVC, this is exactly, this is your basic route setup and config. So it's not the global. Usually you have to pop that into the application start, but here it's going to call and it's going to work. If you have areas, this, I think it's too late or it's too early, I forget. You do then have to do a little bit of fiddling around with it if you have areas to register. But your routes, you're okay. Okay, so in our controller, we're going to crack it open. Super simple. We just got a home, we got an index, and we're using our arbitrary class. And we're just passing Josh, which is going to return Josh. So it's going to say my name. And we come down here in the views, and this is your very basic view. And in fact, our layout is just literally the least that you can put on a page. So this is your essentially MVP MVC. Your minimum viable product MVC. All right, if we look at our packages config, so we have the stuff that you need for MVC to run, and we also have the arbitrary library. Now, in my Nuget sources, I don't have that site, because I don't have it published here. You can actually point it to a folder, and if you have Nuget packages in there, it'll find it. So I have a source for this that's just pointed to the bin folder to find that Nuget package. But of course, if you're running that, you're going to have your own Nuget server running, and you're going to have that source in there. So I have that installed, and because it's there, I can use it. We saw it in the controller to say use an arbitrary library. And so here's the PowerShell to convert all the CS to CSPPs. So it has a parameter. I don't know if you guys ever used PowerShell before. It's really powerful, but sometimes the syntax is really weird. But it's really powerful. So we take a param. That script path just figured out where we're running from, and I'm saying ignore obj bin and assembly info. And then this is this gets a list of all the CS files because we say where the extension is CS. So now we have a list of all the CS, and then we run this copy on all of that. So we make a copy of all the CS to cs.pp's. And then we come over here, and then we get a list of all the PPs, and then right here is where we just take it. And then, like I said, there's multiple tokens you can use, although honestly, the only one I've almost ever used is root namespace. There's a couple others. You can just add your replaces here for multiple tokens, but I'm just saying find that root namespace and replace it with $sign root namespace $sign. Again, this is stuff that you can look up in the NuGet docs. So that's our PowerShell that we're going to kick off of there. Now I don't have an HTTP module or a web config set up. We're going to take a look at this, make sure everything's running fine. And it should build the packages that we're expecting. We'll take a look at the post build to see what we're running to build the packages, and we'll take a look at the packages. Again, this is pretty much like 10 lines of HTML. There we go. So H1 index, and there you go. So you can see MVC is working fine. It routed, it sent you to the correct page. We have the arbitrary class library working right. So this is a working MVC site. So this is kind of our prototype then, that if we want someone to be able to hit the ground running with an MVC, we're going to use this to build an MVC site. Okay, so here's a new spec. Again, you can build this by hand. You can use that GUI to kind of start this, or you can just come in here. It's just XML. It's pretty easy to edit. All that top stuff we kind of already talked about. It's just metadata information. What we have new is this dependencies. So here are the libraries that we're saying we depend on. So when you install this NuGet package, you need to go find these. So MVC then has its dependencies, so it'll grab Razor, web pages, all the stuff you need for MVC. You can explicitly target a specific version of MVC. the web activator X because we need it for the app start, and the arbitrary library because it's arbitrary. So we point to that, and then you can see down here we have files. So, you know, this syntax you've probably seen if you've used any like JavaScript build runners, you know, ... all folders, all files underneath. So that's saying take everything from views and drop it into a folder in the package called content/views. Now, in the NuGet package, there's a specific folder called content, and the root of that folder is the root of your new project, if that makes sense. So by taking this from views and putting it in the target of content views, we're going to take everything in there, and then when you install it, it'll be in views in the root of your folder, new project. And then right there, we have a cs.pp. So we're saying grab that controller, cspp, and pull it over, and pop it in controllers. And the same thing with the route config .cs.pp, and drop that. Yes?
Well, can you move the
yes.
over to the left slightly?
Yes.
Under the dependencies where there's the group, what are groups for?
For .NET versions.
Okay.
So you can put, I think it's like ID or net, and you say like net 4, net 4.5.
Okay.
If you don't put it, it'll just pretty much run at the version you're at. And if you include one that's not there, it won't exist. You'll have trouble.
Okay.
So if you really need to worry about setting things up for specific versions, you know, you need to set that up. Now, because we're internal, we know everyone has like 4.5.2. So we don't worry about that too much. Again, this isn't too complex. You know, if you have to have multiple builds and multiple DLLs, it can get a little bit more complex. You probably want to run a PowerShell script to set everything up and build your packages. Yeah.
So if you emit version, will you get the latest? Like, for instance, with your arbitrary library, if you wanted that to always be the latest, no matter what, you know it's not going to break anything.
You know, I'm not sure. I've always put explicit. It may. And you know, that is the minimum version. You know, NuGet always says if you put .8 and like everything else is like .8 there, it'll use that.
Okay.
So, sorry, I don't know offhand if you omit that. Okay, so because I built this and we looked at the site, it should have built our NuGet packages. Oh, actually, let me take a look at that, show you how that is building off the properties. Again, we're just going off the post build hook. So we just run PowerShell. So we're saying run this file, and then use a namespace, local variables 2016. So anywhere it finds that, it'll just replace it with the root namespace. And we do a pack, the difference being that we're not sending the CSproj to it. We're sending the new spec. So we're saying, here is the complete definition of the NuGet file I want you to create, and create that NuGet package.
Where's he going to put that?
That'll put it in bin.
Okay.
Yep, which I will show you right here. So bump back up, come over, go to bin. So that was built at 7:01. So we just built this. So there's our dependencies. You can see right there. You know, greater than or equal to these. And there's a content. So we said grab app start. There's our route cs.pp. You can even view the files in this little tool. So you can see right there, root namespace was replaced. With this home controller, you got your root namespace right there replaced. And we go to views, and then we grabbed everything underneath, which, because those are namespace, we can just pop those in and use those. So we took that MVC site, and then we turned it into a NuGet package. Now, we're not going to install this one. We're going to add a little bit more to it, and then we're going to go ahead and install an MVC site before we're done. So a couple more slides, a couple more things to cover. All right. So we use dynamic registration. We used our new spec file. We created a NuGet package for MVC. We're hooking on the same stuff. Okay, so this is kind of off to the left here. Talking about theming Bootstrap. So everyone knows what Bootstrap is, right? To preface this, I guess I could show, as I said in the beginning, I worked for Beacon. And then not too long ago, they sent out, I didn't pull it over farther. We have a nice marketing graphic standard. Got the brand family logos, you know, how they look, how you're supposed to use them, how you're not supposed to use them. You guys have probably seen this if you've seen the billboards. You know, they're matching the marketing standards. So this is sent out to all associates. We have specific colors to use. You know, your common brand stuff. You know, how to use certain ones. You know, don't use crazy colors. Don't use it black and white. Use explicitly defined colors. So what we did then was to take Bootstrap and theme it to that. So, you know, use the correct colors, get the images out there, you know, use Bootstrap how we want it. So the Bootstrap source, at least for 3, is in less. I don't know if anyone's used less, but it's just like a CSS preprocessor. Although Bootstrap 4 is going to be in Sass. So what I'm going to show you won't necessarily go across the 4, but it should be very similar for 4. So pretty much what you do is you go to GitHub and you download the source to Bootstrap. And then there should be a folder in there that's less. And that's going to include all the less files to build the CSS. So you grab that, you pop that in your project. If you don't want to build the JS and the fonts, you can grab the distribution of that, you know, because they have all the JS source. But you can just grab that and pop that in your project as well. Now, because you're using less, you're going to need less, which runs on Node.js. So you're going to need to install those. And then we built a PowerShell script that will kick off that compile and create a CSS file that is like a beacon theme that's on top of Bootstrap. So we'll take a look at that. I just need to jump in between. All right. Okay. If I can type. All right, so I have this set up. Okay. So we got a little bit more here. So here's a theme folder that we added. And then here is less. So here is less straight from Bootstrap. If you look at it, and in fact, newer versions of Visual Studio know what less is. They'll highlight it for you. It's just a preprocessor for CSS. And then inside of that, there's going to be a less file that imports all the others, and that's bootstrap.less. So what you do is you create your own less file. You import that bootstrap.less, which is then going to pull in all the other Bootstrap stuff. And then you put your stuff that you want to extend. So if you define the variable again later, it overwrites what it is. So, you know, we're just extending it. If you don't extend it, it's going to be whatever it is in Bootstrap. So you don't have to go through and find, you know, every single thing to overwrite. So here, you know, we have the beacon colors, you know, set up the primary success, set up the fonts, which that was defined in the marketing document. So pretty much everything that you want to extend, you just define here. So that's in there, and then we have this build theme.cs. So it's just saying, find out where I'm at, take beacon less, and compile it to CSS local variables theme.cs, and then call it less, which that's the command that'll run Node.js and compile that for you. So if we look at this, then we come down here, and we actually then have a new spec. Now again, you can be as granular as you want. So for example, if you want to break out the theme, because let's say you have other sites that you want to possibly put the theme into after the fact, you know, you can create a site and just install the theme file. Or, you know, you can have your MVC core that relies on the theme, which I'll show you can be updated. Now, Bootstrap, the JavaScript requires some jQuery, so we set that as a as a dependency. And because we stuck everything under content, we're saying pull everything under content and put under content, which if you guys have ever installed any Nuget packages, that's kind of the common place. You have a content and usually have CS, images, all that underneath. If we take a look, we can see that it's here. We have CS, which we haven't built it yet. We have the fonts installed. These are some beacon images installed. And then we have the JS, which is straight from Bootstrap. And then we'll look at this other new spec. So this is very similar. The only difference is now we're saying use the NuGet package local variables.theme. And we went ahead and updated the layout. So let's go ahead and run this. So this will have, I kind of threw together a quick theme that highlights, what was defined in the marketing standard using, all the Bootstrap pieces. And then we'll turn this into a package, which we're doing right now because we're running it. So right now it's building those packages for us, ready to go. Give it a couple seconds. All right, so you can see we have Bootstrap buttons. We have labels. I didn't put all the Bootstrap stuff down there. I just put a couple to kind of show. This is Bootstrap, but themed with the colors. And if you pop those open, that would be the exact colors that were defined in that document. We got a couple things here you can pop open. For example, if you're doing like Memorial, they usually have a blue background, or Elkhart has a green. That's the color that was in there, so it's kind of bright. So this is a package that we have a theme. We have a very basic setup. You can still see down here, say my name, Josh. It's still using that arbitrary library. So pretty much I just took the MVC site that we had before, added the theme, and updated the layout so that it would present that. So if we look in the folder, there it is. So we should have an updated core. So we see that it added theme. As every time you build, you get a new version of this NuGet. So you just build a prototypical site that you want, and then just put everything you in and make sure everything is pointed to where it needs to go, and it will work. So here's the content. Because we had the less build the CSS, there it is. We have the fonts, we have the images, we have the JS. That one's a little bigger because it has all the stuff in it. So we're going to go ahead and see how this works then. So we're going to add one more project. So we are going to grab a web application. I'm not going to worry about naming it. Now here, if you want specific templates, you can click MVC, Web API, but we're going to go with empty. We literally want nothing in our project except a web config. So here's our project. We've got a packages config and a web config. This is as empty as a project as you can get. So we're going to come in here and we're going to say manage NuGet. You can use a package manager console if you want. So up here, this is how you set it up. You can see I've just pointed these to folders. There's a library bin released for that. There's bin for the MVC setup. So, and then we're saying look at the folder for local variables. You can add your own Nuget server in there, and then as you install stuff, it looks across all of those to determine where to get your packages from. And so we can see here's our local variables MVC core. There's 1.0, we just built it. Here's our dependencies. So we're going to go ahead and say install. It should come up and say, hey, I found some more dependencies I'm going to need to install. So this is everything together. I'm going to say OK. I accept. Give it a second while it downloads everything and installs it. All right, and we're finished. So we can pop over to this one. And then we can go ahead and kick this one off. So this is kind of culmination of everything we've done. So you get a Nuget server, you've built all your packages, and then this is what you get. A 2-minute install for a working MVC site with the theme that you need, all the libraries. You know, if you need arbitrary library, it's installed. So that's that project. We just said install, and there it is.
Cool.
And because they're Nuget packages, like I said, you can put your theme, you can make them as granular as you need to be. And then if you need like 5 packages, you just create another one that says, I need these other 5 packages, and you install that. So, that's it for my talk. One-click MVC site creation. Any questions? I know it's very .NET specific, so if you don't do .NET, it probably wasn't as interesting.
So both of those NuGet packages that you created, they're all based out of the same project? Is that normal?
Again, it depends on how granular you want to be.
Okay.
So I wanted to break out the theme away from the actual creation of like the MVC core. So I created 2 packages, and I guess I didn't show it, but you just run your NuGet pack twice. You say, here's this new spec file, create this. Here's this new spec file, create that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so again, if you never have a need for separating those, just pop it in one. So that's why I want to show that. You can be as granular as you want to be by explicitly defining your NuGet spec file, new spec. Any other questions? All right, thank you.